Great. We are walking through a shopping centre in Baghdad. Seems perfectly quiet and comfortable and indeed like any other Middle Eastern city at the moment. And yet, just beyond the eye line, as it were, you know that there's the possibility, very real possibility, that there might be, for instance, a suicide bomb, that any one of these cars might actually contain large amounts of explosives. This is a Shiite area, and who knows, somebody may be targeting it, not necessarily targeting us, but targeting the community in general. It's also possible that somebody might be spotting us right at this moment, might get on the telephone to some friend of his and suggest he comes round with his Kalashnikov. You can't be certain. Yet all round us, life is going on completely as normal, even though everyone, from the policeman on point duty to the drivers of the cars he controls, is thoroughly aware that there could be some horrifying outbreak of violence at any moment. There is, after all, usually at least one each day in Baghdad. So what do the people stuck in the traffic jam think about all this?
كل شيء ماكو يا أخي كل شيء ماكو يعني أبسط وسائل الحياة ما موجودة وأمان ماكو زين.
Basic essentials are not available. The old regime is gone. We wanted a better alternative, but there isn't one. Everything is getting worse. If Saddam Hussein was still in power, we'd have been better off.
صدام حسين لو باقي صدام هواي أفضل.
When there are bombs, the roads are closed and my business as a taxi driver suffers. There is danger everywhere, but I have to work to feed my family.
Life is very hard. People get killed everywhere. We are the only people who can survive such life. The solution is a radical change of government.
But what that radical change should be, no one seems to know. People feel the politicians have abandoned them to all this mess and danger by their feeble bickering. But as an American patrol rumbles through the streets of Baghdad, you have the feeling that the Americans are becoming increasingly peripheral here too. Since the violence is getting worse, the conclusion many Iraqis draw is that the Americans actually have little or no effect on the situation. Except many, or perhaps most, Iraqis would say to make it even worse. This is the triumphant homecoming of an Iraqi cameraman, Ali al-Mashkadani, who works for Reuters news agency. He's just spent 2 weeks as a prisoner of the Americans for having what they thought were suspect numbers in his mobile phone. It's the second time he's been arrested and released. His crime, according to Reuters, was reporting honestly on the situation.
So, what sort of time did you have?
I'll carry on working for Reuters, although this time it was worse in prison. Psychologically, it was harder.
I'm fine. How are you? You look okay.
Good.
Worrying, yeah? Sorry. Come and sit down.
But while everyone else is welcoming him back, one of Ali's friends and colleagues is missing. There are pictures on the wall to keep his memory fresh, though. Walid Khaled was a driver who worked with Reuters cameramen, and the Americans shot him dead last August when he was out working. Given the serious difficulties that other news organizations have in getting around, it's the agency camera teams who are the real heroes of this entire news story.
This is our tripod, this is our flak jacket, and this is our fuel.
Another Reuters cameraman, Walid Mubda, is going out on a story with his driver. They've got to be careful.
Are there places in Baghdad where you don't go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We know there is some place we can't enter. We can't film there.
Just too dangerous.
Yeah. As you know now, Baghdad is separated to different parts, Shia, Sunni, militia parts. So it's not easy to... but we try to work with all the people. But some people it's very difficult to work with them, like the insurgents and the...
Yes. You've lost a lot of people, haven't you? I mean, there's several Reuters people killed.
Yeah, it's not because we are in the front line, and we are in the middle of the groups, the police and the insurgents, the American and the Iraqi. We are in the middle of them, so we must work with all these people, and it's not easy.
But it's worth doing, is it? Is it important to do what you do?
Yes, I think it's important. It's an important part of the history of Iraq, and I think we write it. Someone must write it, and someone must tell the people the story. And if we don't do it, and the other one want to do it, no one tell the story, no one tell the truth.
It's late afternoon, but the temperature is still nearly 50 degrees centigrade. This used to be one of the more expensive and nicer parts of Baghdad. Now, well, you can see what it's like.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much. So
As for Mohamed Ahmed's barber's shop, it may look neat and cool, but it's unpleasantly hot inside.
I don't have any water supply here. The water pressure in the mains is too low to reach my shop. Therefore, I have installed a pump to get water from a central underground pipe. We go for 18 to 20 hours a day without electricity. It's difficult to do business like this. The generator works all the time, and because of that, it's always breaking down.
Close by is the Palestine Hotel, where the world's reporters stayed during the invasion of Iraq 3 years ago. Last October, there were 3 huge bombs here, intended to bring the hotel down. The bombers were only stopped at the last moment, and the bombs went off out in the open here. No one died, and the hotel's still standing, but the Palestinians seemed to lose the will to live after that. Now it's almost empty. The last 2 news organisations still based here will soon move out.
I suppose it's really rather sentimental of me, unnecessarily so, but this is really depressing. It used to be the beating heart of what you might call American Baghdad. It was a place where all the Iraqis came in order to get jobs and present themselves to the new masters of the country. You had to fight your way here, sometimes really almost literally, through crowds of soldiers and civil servants and hangers-on and so on. And now it's completely empty. There are pigeons roosting in the roof. Beside the river Tigris, I took a stroll with one of the most famous journalists in Baghdad, John Burns of the New York Times. The Americans spent $2 million turning this into a public park, hoping to win Iraqi hearts and minds. Instead, it's just grown wild.
You know, all the trend lines, the important trend lines, seem to be down, but on the other hand, it's hard to imagine here this whole enterprise, this American-British enterprise in Iraq, failing outright because the consequences would be so catastrophic. And so maybe this is hope triumphing over reality, but I have the feeling that what we're going to see is more likely to be a continuing kind of muddling through with rather heavy price to be paid by everybody, including US and British troops.
And especially by local.
And by local people, of course. A helicopter today, Black Hawk, out of here, a 40-minute run to the southwest, all along the way over Sunni territory, the heartland of the insurgency, people running out of their houses and waving. When I said to General Casey the other day, you know, if you judged by the number of people who are waving at us, you'd think this war was winnable. First of all, he looked at me wryly. We were sitting in a helicopter with headsets on. He said, well, it's won already, isn't it? Well, of course, he knows it isn't. But then he said, speaking more seriously, you know what our intel people tell us is that a lot of these people wave because they're afraid that if we don't, we'll shoot at them. I found that very demoralizing.
In any war, there's always a tipping point, a moment when it's too late to change the inevitable outcome. Has the tipping point come in Iraq? Has it perhaps even passed? Maybe we'll look back and decide that by June 2006, this was a war the Americans and their allies could no longer win. Not at any rate in the terms President George W. Bush once promised.